The last thing regarding the data screening is data outlier. So data outlier happens when your data lie outside most of the other values in a set of data. It means that if you have a particular data which is much smaller or much larger than the other set of data. The following are the steps to investigate whether or not your data consists of the outlier. So here are the steps. The first one is you click Analyze, right? And then you go to Descriptive Statistics. This time you click Explore. So after you click Explore, it will show you a dialog box like this. You are given 3 columns. The first one is dependent list, factor list, and then label cases. Please be careful on which items should be put in the dependence list box and which items should be included in the factor list. So dependent list is actually the items of your variables. So if you have tests, then you put your test items there. If you have questionnaire, then you put your questionnaire items there. Factor list is usually referred to the what is called by demographic information. For example, age, gender, origin, and so on and so forth. So it's clear then for the dependent list, you can choose your instrument items. Okay, and then for the factor list, which one belongs to the demographic information? For example, is gender. Okay, what about speaking score? Because it's also your variable, then you can also put speaking score in the dependent list, right? The next step is click Statistics. In the dialog box, you have to make sure that the confidence interval for the mean is 95% because we are in the social studies, so 95% is a good number. Next, this is the most important step in analyzing the outliers. You have to checklist the outliers here and then you click Continue. The next is you click OK and the result will be shown as below. So there you go, this is the result. There are some results reported by the SPSS. However, if you want to check whether or not you have the data outliers, we can refer to the what we call by stem and leaf plots. So we can refer to the results of the stem and leaf plots. The SPSS will report item by item. So you have to see the data for each item. Here is the item number 1. Let's see the figure of the stem and leaf plots of the first item of the questionnaire. ICT membantu saya meningkatkan pengetahuan kosakata saya dengan adanya kamus online yang ada di internet. Now let's see the figure. Here we have male and female. Why? Because we have the factor list, which is the gender. That's why in the result, we have 2 groups, male and female. What does this figure show us? Here, for this particular item, and among the 4 responses, strongly disagree, disagree, agree, and strongly agree, most of the participants, both male and the female, chose number 2 or number 3. It means they choose either strongly disagree or agree. If you see that. Okay, let's move on to the next questionnaire item. Here we also have the similar figure, which means there is no data outlier for this specific item because there is no data which falls far away from the set of the data. Now let's see which one is called data outliers or which one is having the data outlier. Now, please take a look at this. This is very interesting. Can you see this? We have this questionnaire item labeled as ICT membantu saya meningkatkan kemampuan grammar saya. We have quite various answers, especially for the female group. The male group, most of them don't agree or agree with these statements, as you can see here. However, what about the female? Most of them disagreed with the statement. However, if you can see here, there are 3 respondents answered strongly disagree. How do I know that there are 3 participants answered strongly disagree? Yes, because if you see here, there are numbers 107, 95, 116. This number shows there were 3 respondents strongly disagreed with this statement. And there were also 3 respondents said agree to this statement. While for the strongly agree, 2 respondents answered strongly agree. What about the rest? Most of the participants answered number 2 or disagree. So this is what we call as the true outlier observations, because your respondents answered that way. Either it is intentionally or unintentionally, but it came from the respondents. Okay, let's see another samples of the data outlier. What do you think about this? Do you think this specific item has the data outlier? Or do you think data outlier exists in this item? No, that's great. Because there is no specific number, or because there is no data, differs greatly from the majority of the data set. So this is what we call as the majority of the data set. Good. What about this? Yes, there are data outliers exist in that specific items. Correct. The majority chose agree, while the rest, for the male, we have 3 male respondents strongly disagree to this statement. However, there were also 1, 2, 3, 4 respondents strongly agreed to this statement. See? These data differ greatly from the other set of data. And it also happened to the female. 4 female respondents strongly disagree to the statement, while 3 female respondents strongly agree to the statement. So again, the data outlier also exists here. That was the questionnaire items. What about the score of the speaking test? Again, we also have 2 different groups, male and female. The total numbers are 132. And for the scoring, we have 20, 40, 60, 80. Okay, the highest is 80. Let's see here. Most of the test takers or the respondents got 6 to 7. See, 60 to 7. So probably the mean score falls between 60 to 80, around 70. However, here there was 1 participant who scored below 20, and 3 other test takers or respondents had around 30 points. So these 4 participants are called as the data outliers. Okay? So after you know whether or not you have the data outliers, what should you do then? Well, there have been so many debates about whether or not a researcher exclude outlier data points from their statistical analysis. For example, let me show you some of the ideas why checking data outliers is important. Here, he mentions that statistical patterns and conclusions might differ between analysis including versus excluding the outliers. Also, I found a very interesting article regarding the outliers that entitled Outliers to Drop or Not to Drop. here it mentions that outliers can be really mess up your analysis. However, it also stated that we cannot just drop an outlier because outliers can be legitimate observations and are sometimes the most interesting ones. It also shows some ways to deal with the data outlier. The first one is if it is obvious that the outlier is due to incorrectly entered and measured data, you should drop the outlier. So the first suggestion is if the cause of the outlier is because the researcher mistakenly input the data, just like I demonstrated earlier. For example, the data should be 2, however, it is inputted as 22 or 23. You just need to go back to your data in the SPSS and then you edit that. Okay? So the second suggestion is if the outlier doesn't change the results but does affect assumption, you may drop the outlier. But note that in a footnote of your paper. Okay, let me continue with number 3 and then we discuss number 2 and 3 all together. More commonly, the outlier affects both results and assumptions. In this situation, it is not legitimate to simply drop the outlier. You may run the analysis both with and without it, but you should state in at least a footnote the dropping of any such data points and how the results change. So for number 2 and number 3, the cause of the data outliers are from the respondents. Here, the respondents either intentionally or unintentionally leave the items blank without any answer. What you can do is you can drop that respondents. For example, respondents number 23 left 2 items blank without any answer. So the researcher can decide not to include the response from respondents number 23. That is why in a quantitative research, it is suggested to have more data, more questionnaires, or to get more surveys answered as the backup. So it's good to have more responses than the required numbers of the respondent you should get in the quantitative research. Or, as suggested in number 3, before you dropped the outliers, you can run the analysis with the outliers and then you compare the results of the analysis without the outliers. And then if you find that the analysis resulted from the data without the outliers, you can proceed the analysis by dropping the outliers. However, you need to give notes, you need to mention that, you need to highlight that in some section in your discussion. Alright, it's important to notify about that. Okay, what about the test? If you have tests as an instrument, outliers can be seen from the scores of the test. For example, if you have 55 test takers and among those 55 test takers, there are 5 students who got extremely high or extremely low. So you can either do number 2 or number 3. You can either drop those 5 scores from those 5 test takers, or as suggested in number 3, you can run the analysis with those 5 scores and then you can run another analysis without those 5 scores. So then you can compare. Okay, so I think that's all the discussion about the data outliers. I hope you found it beneficial and see you in another video.